but keep moving forward in our Christian life. Growth takes time. Spiritual growth takes time. And again, some people have a different problem. They conclude that they have arrived at spiritual perfection yet, but we know that's not the case. Notice that the Christian life is one that is characterized by devotion as well. Verse 13 says, "Brothers, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do." Paul had one great aim in mind and purpose in life. He did not attempt to mingle the world and religion together. He did not seek to obtain wealth. His aim was to be more like Jesus Christ. Again, the secret to spiritual progress is to concentrate on one thing. Focus on one thing. Focus on your spiritual life. In order to achieve our goal, we must devote ourselves to running the Christian race, if you will. No athlete succeeds by doing everything. They succeed by specializing in their craft, don't they? I mean, there are some people that can multitask and do a lot of different things, but most of the time these athletes, when they focus on their game, they're focused on the one thing. I mean, we're in the football season right now, and what do? They're focused on winning that next game. They're focused on winning or beating the next team. Right? And they get all hyped up and they get pumped up. And that's all they focus on. They usually don't let other things distract them from their goal. The Apostle Paul also tells us that when we are pressing toward our spiritual goal, we must go in the right direction. In verse 13, Paul gives us a direction for our spiritual race. He says, "Forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead." Notice we can't look back if we're going to reach the goal in front of us. In other words, don't live in the past. Paul tells us that if we want to be focused on our spiritual growth, we must forget the past. The past is gone. We can't change the past. We can't undo it. All we can do is move forward. We need to remember the mistakes we've made in the past so that we can avoid doing them in the future. Now, he's not telling us that we should forget it, because none of us forget. Paul is also not telling us that we don't have to fulfill our responsibilities of our past. If we have wronged somebody, we should try to make it right. If we have stolen from someone, we should make restitution. If we have a problem with someone, we should seek to reconcile with them. That's something that we've done in the past, but we need to remember that and try to rectify the problem. What does he mean here? When Paul talks about forgetting, he is telling us that we can't and must not live in the past. What happened in the past, again, is past, and all we can do is move forward. There are two reasons we need to forget the past. First, we have a tendency to fixate on the past. Sometimes when we think about the past, we just, I wish I would have done that differently. And we can get so fixated on that past that we don't move forward. Second, we have a tendency to rest on the past, and we will repay or play the past and be content to remember it instead of pushing forward or ahead. Paul determined that he would not rest on his past accomplishments. Paul had many accomplishments in his life, but he said, I'm not going to stay there. That's already happened. That's already done. All I can do is continue to move forward. And like Paul, we must forget about the past and focus on the present as well as our future. The past year is gone. the things we've done in the past year, we can't undo. All we can do is focus on now and what's ahead of us. And again, as Paul says, he hasn't attained spiritual perfection yet. And I don't think any of us here have yet either. Our goal is to continue to push on. But you know, one thing I have to think about. Just like an athlete working on their craft, it takes hard work, doesn't it? These guys just don't jump in the football game and start playing. They have to work hard, don't they? They have to exercise. They have to physically train. They're constantly focused on the next game or trying to win the Super Bowl, if you will. And they're constantly pushing themselves harder and harder. It takes a lot of work, a lot of exercise. Same thing with the Christian life. It's not easy. But we have to continue to exercise our spiritual qualities, if you will, to continue to grow. Sports teams have this problem. They have a great victory and then they may glow over that victory, and the next game they lose to an inferior team because they lost their focus. We've seen that happen many a times, right? I have. Forgetting what is behind means to no longer be influenced by or affected by what has happened in the past. It simply means that we break the power of the past by living for the future. Paul tells us in order to press toward our spiritual goal, it takes determination. Verse 14 says, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Paul tells us that he pressed on. This is the same word that he used in verse 6 when Paul talked about his zealous persecution of the early church. He was pressing on to persecute the church. Is with this same kind of intensity that Paul pursues God's plan for his own life. I mean, Paul was a zealous person for what he believed in. Even though he was wrong. But he still believed it. He believed he was doing God's work at that time. The Greek word used is here to describe a hunter eagerly pursuing his prey. A person did not become a winning athlete by listening to lectures, watching movies, or reading books, or cheering at the game. He or she becomes a winning athlete by getting into the game and determining to win. Well, as Christians, we are in the game. We're in the game. Paul has the same zeal and determination that he had whenever he was pursuing the church. And now he has a different purpose. He tells us that he is stretching forward and he is reaching for the goal. He is not concentrating. He is not only concentrating, he is straining forward. And again, you get the image of a guy running a track meet. Remember how, we've all seen people running the track races, and whenever they come to the finish line, what do? They're straining as they're moving forward to the finish line. They're pushing themselves and getting that chest out there and trying to cross that finish line. They are really straining to be the winner on that race. And this is what Paul is talking about here. He is straining. He's pushing forward. He's pushing himself harder and harder. I know even in my own spiritual walk with God, there have been many times I have struggled with scriptures and worked hard at trying to figure out what in the world is all about. And it's the same thing in our spiritual walk. I'm trying to get more and more into God's mind to understand what He's talking about. I strain at it. I strain my mind trying to understand God. This is a spiritual pursuit of mine that God has called me to. And I push hard at it. And I know I haven't attained it all yet, and I'm still working at it. But you get the point here. It takes work. It takes a lot of determination, doesn't it? Well, some of mankind's greatest contributions have come from people who decided that no sacrifice was too large and no effort too great to accomplish what they set out to do. Edward Gibbons spent 26 years writing the history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. 26 years. Noah Webster worked diligently for 36 years to bring into print the first edition of his dictionary. 36 years. See, growth will not happen if we haphazardly just go about it. It takes time, it takes effort. From a practical standpoint, it means making time for God in our schedule. Finding time to thoughtfully read the Bible. Planning for times of prayer. Making worship and service a priority in our calendars. Pushing ourselves to study and read for spiritual growth. See, it doesn't happen by accident, does it? It takes effort, it takes determination. A successful coach reported that he lived by a very simple creed he found one time. The creed reads, "Press on, nothing in the world can take place of persistence, talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are important." Well, yes, it takes determination. Paul tells us that we must always keep our eyes on the prize. And again, it is like the Olympic athlete who trains tirelessly for the gold medal to win at the Olympics. When they get tired, they imagine what it would be like standing on the platform and hearing the national anthem being played after they won the match. And that picture spurs them on. And I think, what is our goal? To meet Jesus, right? That should be our spiritual goal. We want Him to say, "Hey, well done, my faithful servant." Years ago, a young child was growing up in Cleveland in a home which he later described as materially poor but spiritually rich. One day, a famous athlete, Charles Paddock, came to his school to speak to the students. At the time, Paddock was considered the fastest human being alive. He told the children, "Listen, what do you want to be? You name it and then believe that God will help you be it." The little boy decided that he too wanted to be the fastest human being on earth. The boy went to his track coach and told him of his new dream. His coach told him, it's great to have a dream, but to attain your dream, you must build a ladder to it. Here is the ladder to your dreams. The first rung is determination. And the second rung is dedication. The third rung is discipline. And the fourth rung is attitude. The result of all that motivation is that he went on to win 4 gold medals in the 1936 Berlin Olympics. He won the 100-meter dash and broke the Olympic and world records of the 200-meter. His broad jump record lasted for 24 years. His name was Jesse Owens.